This is the Steele Report.
And we're going to do what it takes to make sure that everybody in the community feels valued.
Yes, let's call it out, and let's continue to work towards making this one Waterloo, one community, one Cedar Valley.
Tonight on the Steele Report, overcoming racial disparities, closing the gap in Waterloo. It's a one-hour special report from KWWL News.
From News 7 KWWL, this is a special hour-long primetime edition of the Steele Report, Closing the Gap, Racial Disparity in Waterloo. With your host, Ron Steele.
Good evening and welcome. Tonight's program is going to examine an alarming economic gap which currently exists between white and black families in Waterloo. Tonight you're going to hear from numerous guests throughout the hour about these issues, and we'll show you some of the efforts already underway to address the critical areas of concern, including issues like household income, education, housing, unemployment, job skills, and job opportunities. Make no mistake, there are some great things happening in Waterloo right now. You can just start over at the TechWorks building and head east to see some major recent developments, including the new Marriott Courtyard and Blue Iguana, the three-phase Grand Crossing condominiums and apartment complex, Hawkeye Community College's new Adult Learning Center, which we'll be talking about later in tonight's program. Not to mention the amazing downtown revitalization spearheaded by JSA Development and many other projects currently in progress. With a population of 67,587 residents, Waterloo has become one of Iowa's most diverse communities, weaving together a wide variety of races in a cultural tapestry intended to say everyone is welcome here. This is the We the People mural on the East Park Avenue ramp crossing Lafayette Street. Unveiled in May of 2007, painted by artist Richard C. Thomas, this mural celebrates the vast diversity of Waterloo immigrants. Tonight's program will highlight some of the disparities involving African Americans, as published in a 24/7 Wall Street report 5 months ago, which labeled Waterloo-Cedar Falls as the worst place in America to be an African American. 24/7 Wall Street is an online financial news operation founded in 2006. Its articles are often republished by many of the larger U.S. news outlets in the country. In this case, for example, USA Today was among the many news operations to republish the Waterloo-Cedar Falls story on racial disparities. The report from 24/7 Wall Street said, quote, "No U.S. metro area has larger social and economic disparities along racial lines than Waterloo-Cedar Falls, Iowa. Waterloo was ranked number 10 3 years ago, but is now ranked number 1 in the nation for all the wrong reasons." Watching all of this with keen interest, and one of the first people I want you to hear from tonight is Waterloo's two-term mayor, Quentin Hart, the first African-American mayor in the city's history. His reaction to the article, he took it personally.
To me, it was one of the most hurtful things that you can possibly hear as mayor, and being a person that campaigned and worked his entire career about bridging the gap and bringing people together. So to hear it was, I would say, devastating. But on the other hand, understanding that when you take a look at the city, sometimes you can see two different sides of the city. So that was a challenge. But then also hearing people's stories throughout time, or personal testimonies about some of the barriers they faced.
Mayor Hart says it's clear the racial disparities in Waterloo are real.
There are so many gaps. When we talk about the unemployment rate, when we talk about business ownership, when we talk about owning your own house, there are tremendous gaps, and there are still some systemic things that are in place that are keeping us from being able to move forward. But the challenge is, it's not just the mayor's job, it's just not the black community's job, it's just not the white community's job, but folks are going to have to come together like never before.
The mayor says the 24/7 Wall Street article may be a blessing in disguise if the community can come together.
We're not going to be a one Waterloo if we don't start to take a look at ourselves, and if we don't realize that we have been blessed to have this opportunity in history to be able to change the course of our community forever.
So what are the numbers and what do they really mean? You know, there are various agencies which collect this kind of information. And though the numbers are slightly different depending on where you look, it is clear the disparities are glaring. So let's begin tonight with household income. Using U.S. Census information, 24/7 Wall Street reported the median household income of black families in Waterloo at just $25,897, less than half of the $55,335 median income for white families in Waterloo. Now remember, median is not like average. Median means half and half. So in this case, half of Waterloo's black households have annual incomes above that $25,897 mark, and half have annual household incomes below that mark. And that number alone is quite startling because it is just barely above the national poverty level, which this year is $25,750 for a family of four. African Americans make up 15.6% of Waterloo's population, the highest percentage in Iowa. That's really about 10,600 black residents in Waterloo. Cedar Falls has a population of 41,570, but only has 1,140 black residents at about 2.8%. So for this program, we're going to concentrate mainly on the Waterloo disparities. Now keep in mind, some of the numbers in the 24/7 Wall Street report have been called into question by local leaders as being somewhat outdated as we begin this year. But if that household income number is just half as bad as being reported, it's clear to see there are serious economic disparities which exist right now across the city of Waterloo. And for many African Americans who grew up in this city, the article was certainly discouraging at the very least, but also seemed to validate the subtle and sometimes blatant racial prejudices to which Waterloo blacks are often subjected.
Some of the things I'm going to talk about are very painful to me.
Reverend Dr. Mary Robinson addressed the Waterloo City Council about the article at the council's December 17th meeting. Once a high school dropout, Mary went back to school, graduated from Wartburg College and the University of Iowa Law School. She practiced law for more than a decade before her calling to the ministry. Her church is the culturally diverse All Nations Community Church on Normandy Street in Waterloo. Here's her reaction.
I don't see this report as an enemy. I see it as a friend. And it's saying the things that many of the citizens of color in this community have been saying. It validated a lot of it. And so it's our friend. And whether we choose to do something with it to make it better, or we choose to ignore it and bury our head in the sand as if it didn't happen, or we choose to say, no, that can't be true, they're not talking about Waterloo, we have a choice. And this report has given us the chance to take the high road.
Now keep in mind, for the past several months, Iowa has had the lowest unemployment rate in the country, 2.4 to 2.5%, lowest in the nation. But those unemployment numbers are not favorable when it comes to African Americans in Waterloo. The U.S. Census Bureau reports white unemployment in the Waterloo-Cedar Falls metro area at just 4% in the latest numbers available. A little higher than the state average, but still very, very low. But the U.S. Census Bureau estimates black unemployment in Waterloo-Cedar Falls at 19.7%, and even higher in the 24/7 Wall Street article, which had black unemployment in Waterloo at 23.9%, meaning that almost 1 in every 4 blacks who want to work cannot find a job locally. This is even higher than the national black unemployment average, which right now is about 13.3%. Now to one of our 3 panel discussions here tonight, and this first panel consists of 3 individuals who have very important voices within the African American community here in Waterloo. Let's introduce them to you right now. First, please welcome Jerome Amos Jr., a member of the Waterloo City Council. He is retired from John Deere after 33 years working for Deere & Company, and he is the 4th Ward City Councilman in the city of Waterloo, and he won that seat, of course, back in 2015 when that seat became open as Quentin Hart ran for Waterloo Mayor. Next, we have LaTanya Graves, and LaTanya is president of the Black Hawk County chapter of the NAACP. She worked for Hawkeye Community College for 25 years before her retirement. She went back to college, got her master's degree, and she is still working with young people and adults right here locally through Bakari Behavioral Health and also Social Action, Inc. And speaking of Bakari Behavioral Health and Social Action, Inc., we have the founder and president of those organizations, David Goodson. Welcome, David, back to the program. course, the nonprofit which provides services to families, individuals, and organizations, anyone going through a crisis locally. And David has been on the Steele Report before to talk about his own amazing life turnaround story, so I always appreciate his honesty and openness about that. And now he helps local teenagers do the same and stay on the straight and narrow, so to speak. So all three, welcome to the program tonight. The first thing I want, of course, is your reaction to that article, which was pretty negative about Waterloo. Jerome?
Yeah, Ron, when I heard that particular article come out, it really didn't shock me because, I've been in this community my entire life, and a lot of the things that they talked about, we knew that they was actually happening. So for me, it wasn't really a shock. Once again, my concern is okay, if those statistics are there, what are we going to do about it?
Mm-hmm. Again, like Jerome, I was not surprised. I've been a community activist for over 25 years, and I actually became active when Ty Goodson Sr. was given 106 years. And so from that point, I started being very vigilant in the community. And we keep hearing reports every 10 years or more that we rank #1 in the nation, incarcerating African Americans, suspending African American students. And so I didn't find the article, how do I want to say it, surprising.
Ron, tell you the truth, I had several reactions. And as a local activist myself, my critical thinking kicked in when I saw the article and heard about the article. And my first question was, why and why now? And so understanding that we've had, things have been bad or rough in Waterloo. However, my question was why? Why this article and why now? And so I began to think about the fact that we had a black mayor in office.
What exactly are you saying about the timing of this?
Well, just critical thinking. Why? Critical thinking, you simply ask the question, why? Why now? Has it just gotten bad under this black mayor? Has it been bad before? And I would venture to say that it has been.
Yeah, you're questioning the timing of the article under Mayor Quentin Hart.
The timing of the article, and I'm suspect of the fact that the article came out under the administration of a first black mayor.
Until we, as a community, come together, and when I say come together, I'm talking about white individuals that are out there fighting for social justice and equal opportunity, until you're not afraid to lose some of your family, friends, and coworkers because you're standing up for what is right. I say this all the time, nothing is going to change. We've been marching and protesting well before the 60s, and it's still happening. So until we're not afraid to stand up and speak up for what is right, nothing is going to change. And it's going to take everyone. So you're going to have to not be afraid to lose your family, friends, and coworkers because you're standing up for what is right.
More insights from our panelists and other panels coming up during the hour. But right now, we want to turn to the opinions of Waterloo residents often not heard enough, if at all. It's our high school students. What is it like to be an African American student in the Waterloo Community School District? Do they feel they're treated differently? Let's send it over to Abby Turpin. Abby?
Yeah, Ron, as we look into race relations in Waterloo and Cedar Falls, another thought by community leaders is not only how we can make it better for African Americans in our community now, but also how we can make it better for the future generations. KWWL's Jacqueline Madison, a Waterloo West graduate himself, sat down with 3 local high school students in Waterloo to hear their thoughts on how things are currently and also where they see things going.
Have you, as a young African-American teenager, have you been profiled?
Yes, I have been.
Okay, so when, where, why, just...
Certain instances in school, like substitutes will come in and immediately address me like I am a horrible student, like I have a bad attitude and stuff like that. I had an experience with that earlier this year with a substitute in my psychology class who came in and was like, oh, I remember you from this other class that I had, and I've never had a class with this guy.
So my freshman year, I joined JRTC, and every Wednesday we have to wear our uniform and have our haircut and everything. So I had my haircut, and I had like a design on the side of my head. So when we was getting inspected, he asked me, what is that, some type of gang?
On paper, you can like tell, you know, if someone says, you know, reads something about me or looks at my grades or something like that, and then they're like, oh, okay, who is this person? And it's me, and they're like, oh, like they weren't expecting, I guess you could say, like someone, like an African American female to just be, I wouldn't say like as successful, but like as impressive.
So do you think it's hard to succeed as a black person, as an African American?
Yeah.
There are definitely barriers. I think there's like also hard breaking barriers and like trying to erase stereotypes of like traditional black students. It's about like having to prove yourself to teachers. Like, yeah. I mean, you might have these misconceptions about me as soon as I walk in the door because we don't know each other. And then like as the time goes on, you can see how they start to warm up to you. And it's like, why did you have that barrier up in the first place? Because, you know, you weren't like that with her. So why are you like that with me?
So do you think that African American students are viewed differently by white students? Are black students viewed differently by white students? Are their interactions different?
I really don't think it's just based off the color. I feel like it's more the person you are. If you have like a bad reputation through the years, or you just a person that's never in class or got a bad attitude, then it's gonna be teachers or administrators that are on you, because they see if you have a history of doing bad, they're gonna be on you.
Student to student, though, I wouldn't say that there's any tension or anything like that. People are pretty cool.
What do you think is the biggest misconception about black teens?
I feel like one of the top misconceptions is no work ethics. I feel like most people think black African American teens don't have no work ethics. They're undisciplined.
It's like, you know, they're thugs, or they, you know, have some sort of gang relation, or they've done like they have been involved in some sort of criminal activity. That like they're unfocused and that they're like don't have a desire to achieve high level. Like they would rather like stay in town and do like bad things or whatever. But there's so many like kids in high school right now that are trying to do what's best for them. They're trying to figure out how to get to college and how to get scholarships and how to achieve what they want to achieve.
Jacqueline now joins me here in the studio, Ron, and we also spoke with Tavius, Karis, and Jada about the Wall Street 24/7 report.
That's right, Abby. We gave them the facts and figures of the report. We also asked what could be done to change the Waterloo-Cedar Falls ranking as the worst city in America for black Americans.
And here's what they had to say.
I hear the argument a lot about like how African Americans are just people, you know, minorities are like using welfare and things like that. And I think that it comes because, you know, there are a lot more minorities on welfare, and that's in fact the fact that we don't have the same jobs as everyone else. So it's all like, it all stems back to one thing. And so like, yeah, you know, we may not make as much money, and that's why we need this assistant. But you make this much money. We make 46% of what you make. If African American people were more able to like go after the businesses and things that they wanted to bring to the community to spark jobs for other African American people, that would increase the diversity of the area and give more job opportunities to black people.
I really feel like it starts in schools. I feel like that teachers should push kids starting at the younger age first to basically like to work. I feel like and most of me growing up, I had two parents, so that like they pushed me to like be better. So I really do feel like it starts with the youth. Like it starts with like us pushing people younger than us and everything just to like work.
Later in the show, we're going to dig further into their personal upbringings and what and who they think got them on the path to success. Back to you, Ron.
Abby, thank you so much. Really looking forward to hearing again from those students. And if you were thinking about it, by the way, yes, that is Karis Roberts. The Karis Roberts who is the Drake Relays and multiple state track champion who has a full ride to Purdue University. You know, there's a controversial term which often evokes great emotional response when said out loud. And that term is systemic racism, often called institutional racism. The Reverend Abraham Funches Jr. is the director of the Waterloo Human Rights Commission and is one of the state's most respected and powerful black voices. I asked him to explain his definition of systemic racism and how it negatively impacts African American families and their wealth.
Well, systemic racism to me suggests that we're talking about something that moves beyond just the personal relationships, which is what people like to focus on. And we began to talk about institutional racism. In other words, the policies, the body of policies, the laws that are in place that create hardships for black people, other people of color. The numbers speak to what's really happening on the grounds. And then when you do qualitative interviews, when you're talking to actual people, you learn that there are people with educations who talk about not being able to get jobs, which adds to the narrative. And then we also know there are educational disparities. And even though in the Waterloo area, for instance, blacks represent about 16% of the population, we represent 50% of those in jail. So all these things conjoin to contribute to this narrative that was done in the 24/7 Wall Street Report.
Right now, I'd like to welcome to the program 3 individuals on our panel here who have very unique perspectives about the issues that we're following tonight in this special 1-hour program on the Steele Report. So please welcome to our program right now, Dr. Danita Gadsden. Dr. Gadsden is the coordinator of student diversity programs at the University of Northern Iowa, and she is also the owner of 4 Cs Consulting. She is not a native Iowan. She was born and raised in Mississippi. She earned her PhD from the University of Iowa and then moved to the Waterloo-Cedar Falls area. Next on our panel, we have Rastafari Smith. You know him, of course, as Ross Smith, a Waterloo native and member of the Iowa House of Representatives in the Iowa Legislature. He is serving his 2nd term in Iowa House District 62 in Waterloo, having first been elected in 2016. He's also on the House Education Committee and also serves as a consultant for communities and schools of Mid-America based out of the Kansas area. And please welcome Gwen Berry. Gwen is the Chief Diversity Officer at the University of Northern Iowa in Cedar Falls and is a Waterloo native with obviously first-hand experience on this important subject matter we are discussing here tonight in our 1-hour Steele Report. So welcome to the program here tonight. These numbers, even if they're off slightly, represent a huge gap, a huge disparity. And what concerns you the most about looking at that report and those numbers?
I think you make a good point, Ron, when you say even if they aren't exactly what they are now, even if they're a couple of years old, the concern for me is that the Civil Rights Act was passed in the 60s.
1965.
I was expecting much more achievement. I was expecting that a lot of forward momentum would have been gained. And it's unfortunate that some of us live in a way that we're almost insulated from the issues that are out there. But to think that that black people own fewer homes than they did in the 70s is concerning. To think that we earn significantly less than the average white household is extremely concerning, because you put all of those things together, home ownership, education, and income, and you can start to see some other discrepancies.
Roz, that article said Waterloo is the worst place in America to be a black. Do you really believe that?
You know, for me, it wasn't surprising. This is something that I've grown up in this circle, in this conversation. My mother's been at the forefront of this for a long time. Mm-hmm. So for me, that wasn't surprising. The reaction was a surprise. The reaction that we took it as though someone was talking about our family. You know, we can have those conversations within our circle, but when an outsider tells us that that's true, mm-hmm. now we're offended. But I do feel that. I mean, I've had situations personally myself in which racial discrimination has been a huge part of that. Even as an elected official, knocking doors or leaving a church function, you know, I was pulled over by the police and surrounded by cars because I looked like someone who had committed a crime, regardless of the fact that I was wearing a shirt that said, elect Ross Smith, state representative. So for me, it didn't serve as a surprise. This is something that I've known, that I felt. But I do think that the diamond in the rough, per se, is the fact that when you acknowledge that, now we can make progress. But the longer that we doubt the fact that these statistics are true, the further behind the 8 ball will be in regards to how we make progress.
We talk about the Cedar Valley when it is a body. So part of the body is not functioning the way that it ought to function. That's not just that piece's concern. It should not be just that piece's concern. It should be the region's concern. It should be the state's concern. It should be the nation's concern. This is not just a Waterloo issue. If you look at communities across this country, they are experiencing the same thing. You know, you have the east side, west side. You said that, Gwen. Mm-hmm. East side, west side. If you go to any community in this country, there's going to be this divide. And historically, that divide has been an intentional divide, where there was this side that was black and this side that was white, or whatever that divide was, but mostly black and white. And you will start to look at how this side continues to be stagnant and this side continues to grow. That is not just by chance.
And we'll get back to our panelists here in a few moments. Here is a photograph of Waterloo's civil rights icon, Anna Mae Weems, with the late Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. This was taken back in the 1950s when he came to Waterloo. We have it on our huge first floor mural right here at KWWL. Recently, we asked Anna Mae for her reaction to that article.
But it's alarming, and we have to shut the alarm off. Wake up. I was with the governor last week. She's concerned about that too. So we started an organization, a group of people called the Coalition to Unity in the Community. We're going to go to all of you. We're going to beat them. We're glad they come to our attention. We're going to change it. We know everybody in this community has talent. We can use everybody. Everybody is needed in this community. And we're going to show our leadership, and we're going to make it a better community.
And of course, thanks to Anna Mae Weems for her great insight. You know, this article was also critical of Waterloo Police, and Waterloo Police Chief Dan Trelka, now a Blackhawk County Supervisor, told me he certainly was not happy about the assertions in that article because he insists improvements are being made.
A Democrat mayor, Republican police chief, and I feel like we've been an incredibly effective team. Waterloo's been getting kicked around for 80 years, and it just ticks me off because this is not a bad place. People should be looking at, if they want an example of how to do things and accomplish things, look at the white Republican police chief and the black Democratic mayor accomplishing something in this city instead of disparaging us and distorting facts and data that's outdated. We're far from perfect. I'm far from perfect, but we're making a difference. I would say our community relations, the police department's relationship with our African American population right now is better than it's been in years.
Chief Trelka says working with Mayor Quentin Hart, his department is committed to improving police-community relations. Right now, I'd like to welcome 3 additional guests as our guest panelists here tonight on the program. Let me introduce them to you right now as we try to come up with maybe some solutions to what we've been talking about here tonight. Also get the reaction from each of these panelists about that article. Please welcome Deborah Hodges Harmon. She is the lead staff for Iowa Works of Waterloo, and she, of course, is the team leader for the business services area of Iowa Works. So, Deborah, welcome. We think that your organization really is an organization working to close this disparity gap here locally, and we'll talk about that here in a moment. Carrie Dara is CEO of the Cedar Valley Alliance and Chamber, and of course just elevated to that position here not too long ago because she's done such a terrific job here locally. She also spearheaded development of the TechForce campus. And also on this panel is Deb Berry, the president of KBBG Radio, the African American radio station here in the city, and of course you know that she spent 14 years in the Iowa legislature in the House of Representatives and also a former member of the Waterloo City Council. Carrie, your organization has been at the forefront of this, and I think a lot of people feel you're headed in the right direction.
Oh, thanks. I hope so. I hope they realize the sincerity and what we're trying to work on. We started at the Alliance and Chamber in 2013. We started, at that time, a diversity and inclusion committee led by Gene Traynor. And at that time, the committee was put together in order to address workforce issues because we knew that we weren't reaching everyone in the community who could be contributing to our economy and our workforce. That certainly includes the issues that this article brought up with racial issues, but it also was meant to include people with disabilities or returning veterans or people who are incarcerated and they're now able to join the workforce. So we started that in 2013, and that committee has had several annual summits. From there, they created what's called an economic inclusion toolkit. It's on our website, and it's basically to help employers address how to become a more inclusive environment. Where to start. You know, it's a language that many employers have never had to deal with, even though they should have. They may not have realized that they should have. So we have that toolkit for use of our employers, and we recognize those employers who are really taking the leap and really making good strides in having inclusion be part of their vocabulary, part of their hiring practices, both the HRs, professionals, and the CEOs. But as I mentioned earlier when we were talking earlier, what we do, what we have done is primarily on behalf of the employers. What we know we need to do more with and help more the issues around the employees.
I think that's a great start, but I believe it starts with the employers. I think it starts with people, again, moving outside of their comfort zones and being open to things that, are, I think we all have this bit of xenophobia in each of us to some degree. It's time to break away from that, because I want to see that, I want that study to become null and void. I want it to not exist, because again, it's a hurtful realization to all of us. And I've said it to many people, I don't care if we're 1 on the list or if we're 15 on the list, we're still on the list. Let's get off the list.
Get off the list, absolutely.
Yeah.
As quickly as possible. Deborah,
Yep.
Iowa Works is doing some things along this line. What would you like people to know watching this program tonight about the efforts that you're doing to try to close this gap and make this more equal for everyone?
We had to educate our businesses that you're not going to get the highly skilled individuals anymore. You've got to rethink your hiring processes. And some of the things that came out of that was it's hard for you to be fair if you don't have the diversity there to be fair. You look, when I go for an interview or anybody goes for an interview, I want to see people that look like me. I want to see people that look like me in the upper management. I want to see people like me making decisions about the employment in our community.
You know, the issue of minority business ownership is an area of great concern and one being addressed right now here locally. We asked how many businesses exist in Waterloo today and how many are owned by minorities. Well, numbers from the Cedar Valley Alliance and Chamber indicate there are 4,613 businesses in the city of Waterloo. Of those, 537 of those businesses are owned by minorities. And one of those business owners is Rodney Lewis.
A lot of people come from different areas with the expectations to come here and make a better life for themselves and their kids.
That better life lives in this kitchen for Rodney, who moved to Waterloo less than 10 years ago. He puts his heart and soul into every dish he creates as the chef and owner of Rodney's Kitchen and Catering at 624 Sycamore Street in downtown Waterloo.
When I first come here, I was just expecting to come here and work. I wasn't expecting to own a business, my first year here. And I just saw an opportunity for my family and I to, do the things I love. And I started cooking, and that's how I come up with Rodney's Kitchen, just by getting out there and meeting people in the community. When I developed my business, I started doing things for the kids in the community that I saw that was out there being hungry and, poverty-stricken.
Rodney moved into this Sycamore Street location just 2 years ago this May. East High School junior Tyrese Phillip has been with Rodney from the start, learning some valuable business tools.
I really learned how to, run a restaurant, do things in the back, do cashier work, customer service, and just, balance checkbooks and stuff like that.
Tyrese says he may leave Waterloo after graduation, but would like to stay. He doesn't believe Waterloo deserves that #1 ranking, but he was shocked by the disparities addressed in the article.
I think it was unbelievable. I don't think that it was the #1 city in America, not even top 10 or anything like that. But I do feel like there maybe are some problems. Definitely I would stay here. I actually do like it here. I have a lot of friends and family here. And I feel like if there were more opportunities and just more like job opportunities and stuff like that, I would definitely stay here.
I just worked hard and saved what I had, and I met a couple of guys that was business owners here in town, and they pretty much funded everything. My funding came from my name itself, because I built the reputation of Rodney's Kitchen, and so that's how my funding started. But once they was out of the picture, I went off to Denver Banking out in Denver, Iowa, and they gave me my first loan. And I built my relationship with them guys over the last year or so.
Rodney says he is extremely grateful for that ongoing business relationship with the Denver State Bank. For so many, home ownership is the American dream. But long before that article came out back in November, the issue of housing and home ownership was being addressed here locally, with local financial institutions really getting involved to help close that gap. In the Waterloo-Cedar Falls area, 73% of white residents own their own homes. But for African Americans, less than 33% own their own home. That's why local financial institutions are stepping up to help. For example, Viridian Credit Union just received a $1.7 million housing grant to help minority families buy homes locally. Viridian, as you know, is the largest credit union in Iowa and is well known for its inclusion efforts. Viridian's inclusion manager is Angela Weekly, and Angela says this new money is going to help so many families in the area.
Through the U.S. Treasury, we were able to get a grant for home ownership. So we are developing a financial inclusion mortgage. They gave us $1.75 million towards loan loss reserve, which means that we are able to give $21 million in home ownership over the next 3 years. We look at gaps within the communities we serve. So we're going to be able to provide home ownership in areas that may not have been able to do it traditionally because they can't get a traditional mortgage loan. Whether that is because their debt to income ratio is too high or their credit score is lower than they would like it to be. So we are looking at a median income. We're looking at a credit score of 620. We're looking at a debt to income ratio of 45, which is not, if you're in any of those situations, it's really hard for you to get home ownership in Waterloo in particular.
DePaco Credit Union is also trying to close the gap by working directly with local families. And Crossroads Area Branch Manager Tanya McLaughlin says DePaco helps families qualify for home loans with financial education initiatives like money makeovers and making sure they understand the importance of having a good credit score to qualify for home buyer grants.
The member comes in and they want to buy a home. We work with them through either establishing credit or reestablishing credit, and then we help them find grant money through first-time homeowners programs, Waterloo Housing Authority, or Hafer Foundation. We also have the IDA Money Match program, and all those things can be used to help them come up with the cash to be able to put the money down so that they qualify for the mortgage.
Right now, I'd like to throw things over to KWWL Sports Director Rick Coleman. Rick's going to have more perspective from Waterloo residents, including a highly respected local man who originally came to Iowa because of athletics.
Ron, Dallas, Texas native Robert Smith has made Waterloo his home for more than 30 years. A former Iowa Hawkeye football star, Robert says the legendary Hayden Fry is responsible for him coming to Iowa. And Robert's wife, Terry Smith, is the reason he stayed. In 30 years, Smith has made his mark in education and politics here in the Cedar Valley. He says the 24/7 Wall Street Report shows there's still a lot of work to do. The legendary Hayden Fry is in the College Football Hall of Fame because of his amazing coaching record and also his courageous decision in 1965. Fry shattered the color barrier in the Southwest Conference by recruiting Jerry Levias to Southern Methodist University in Dallas, Texas. This had a profound impact on a young Robert Smith. In 1983, Fry returned to Dallas, Texas to recruit Robert Smith to play football for the Iowa Hawkeyes. Smith says he loved what Hayden Fry did back in the 1960s, but he knows Hayden Fry didn't recruit him just because he was black.
Hayden Fry came to get me because I had a talent. I don't think he cared about what color I was. He wanted a winning team.
Smith came to Iowa and enjoyed an outstanding 4-year career as a receiver on Hayden Fry's football team. And he also excelled as a track star. And it was at Iowa Robert Smith met the love of his life, Terry Thomas.
When I first called home, I said, I met this young man, and the number one reason why I fell in love with Robert, he talked about his mom a lot. He was really close to his mother, and that was the number one reason why he and I are together today.
Robert and Terry moved to Waterloo 30 years ago. He says he learned quickly that Waterloo is a relationship town.
People got to trust you. People need to really know who you are and know what your interests are. It is not an information town. That's secondary, is what I've learned. It's a secondary thing. People need to know who you are. They need to know what is your interest and are you about really trying to help people.
Robert Smith served 6 years on the Blackhawk County Board of Supervisors.
You know, he ran as a Republican, and you know, that wasn't, especially in our community.
Just like his mentor, Hayden Fry, Robert Smith never tried to do what is popular, only what he believes is right. While serving on the Waterloo School Board, Robert Smith helped to enact the controversial rule that requires Waterloo student athletes to maintain a 2.0 grade point average to be eligible to play. Many critics say it weakens Waterloo sports teams because a lot of talented athletes aren't eligible. Smith says sacrificing a child's education to win more games is just plain wrong.
Because if a young man can't read and write, but he can score for you and you're okay with that, something is not right. These kids won't play sports forever. So when they're done at 18 years old, okay, you won a championship. But don't we care past what happens to the kids when they no longer can play?
Longtime Waterloo businessman and civic leader Bob Brown remembers a young Robert Smith as being wise beyond his years.
And I really respected him for a young man with so much wisdom and so much maturity for his age. And I still do. I still am amazed at him, how mature and what wisdom and vision he had.
Smith's passion is his work as an executive director at the University of Northern Iowa Center for Urban Education. Smith and his staff are charged with helping to provide educational opportunities for people of all races and backgrounds. When he looks at the disturbing 24/7 Wall Street report, Smith says this is not just a black problem.
We try to make some things a racial line when it's not a racial line, it's a citizen's responsibilities. So white citizens in this community bear the responsibilities for what happens to black students too. Just like when I served on the school board, I cared about the education white kids got. White folks need to care about the education black kids get. So I think if there's anything we can do better in Waterloo, I think it's very important for our white leaders in this community to understand when black kids don't do well, it falls on their shoulders as well.
Now, Robert Smith's wife, Terry, told me this is not just a black issue, but a community issue. People need to understand that we all have to help each other. Ron, back to you.
Right now, let's go back to hear more from the Waterloo High School students. Abby Chirpin and Jacqueline Madison have already talked to these students about their lives as African American students in Waterloo, but right now, you're going to hear from them about their hopes for the future and who influenced their lives.
Who holds you accountable?
Parents are obviously the ones who push us the most, but I'd say like your teachers, once you've sort of established a certain reputation, you set that standard and they're going to hold you to that the rest of the time that they know you. And so coaches, teachers, parents, just really any adult that comes in contact with me for like an extended period of time.
My parents, especially, they're my number one people who held me accountable. And then it's like a few of my teachers, they held me accountable as far as in the classroom. And then my coaches, they push beyond just being able to play sports. They push me to the number one thing is I'm a student athlete, so student comes first.
Yeah, not only is it like our parents and our coaches, but I feel like the only way for you to maintain and be accountable is for you to be the person that requires you to finish what you started.
Your biggest support system, influence, I think just from the conversation, I think your parents have played such an active role.
Education was definitely always instilled in me. Like my mom would read to me, since I was a young age. I would always read, we'd go to the library. I remember like when it came time to get school shoes, I could get certain like dollars worth amount of shoes depending on how many books I read in the summer. So if I wanted Jordans, I had to read a lot of books to get Jordans. And so just things like that, like just pushing me. She would always hold me accountable. Like in elementary school you get 1s, 2s, 3s, and 4s or whatever, but like when you got to middle school, it's like, okay, why do you have a B? It's like, it's a B, what's wrong with a B? And they're like, well, you are more than capable of getting an A, so why do you have a B? And so, I mean, just that, that constant pushing me to do better. And then, yeah, I'd say that parenting plays a huge role in it.
My mom always encouraged us to read and do anything possible for us to be 2 times better than the next person, because she knew that once we hit a certain age, we were going to be hit with adversity.
Financially, how do you get by? What do you have a job? What do you do to help keep yourself stable financially?
Personally, I was blessed for most of my life to live in a two-parent household, and I really felt the change like once my parents did split up. Everything got split up financially, like clothes and shoes for like the start of school we paid by like my dad, and like school like supplies we paid like by my mom. Like those barriers, I feel like change how like kids look at the world.
I actually did have a two-parent household. It taught me basically just to not always look for handouts. I was always wanted to go work by myself and go do something. I also worked during the co-op program as well.
Sometimes, you know, things were stretched, sometimes things were tight, but she's always provided for us. And then now, for the past like 2 years, I've always had a job, and like now I work and I do co-op at school too.
Do you know what you want to do in college? Or what you want to study in college?
I want to study biology.
Biology?
Yeah.
Okay.
I want to major in accounting.
Ooh.
Aerospace engineer.
Ron, it was a great conversation. Now, Jacqueline, I want to ask you, what was your biggest takeaway from what the students had to say?
Abby, I honestly would say it really boils down to positive influence. Yeah. Parents playing such a key role, as well as their teachers and other adults who just took time to care about them and their personal lives.
Yeah. Perfectly said. Well, a huge thank you to Karis, Jada, and Tavius for speaking with us. They are incredible young people ready to take on the world and have a lot of support behind them.
We also want to give a big thank you to the Waterloo Community School District for helping make the conversation happen.
Ron, back to you.
Thanks so much to Abby and Jacqueline, and of course our very best to the students from East and West. And you know, as businesses cry out for higher skilled workers, the Waterloo Community School District is already offering its students an option, a great option, to help them literally jumpstart their chances for future success. Tonight, Amanda Gilbert takes us to the brand new Waterloo Schools Career Center at Central.
Yeah, Ron, the Waterloo Career Center focuses on bringing together high school students from Cedar Falls, Hudson, and Waterloo. They all can get both high school and college credit while exploring different career paths. Now, this has been open for just 3 years, but it's already impacting area students.
We all have some idea of what a classroom setting is like, but what about something different? The Waterloo Career Center is a place where Benjamin Kraft's passion for mechanics and engineering has grown.
It was like a spark in a way, you know. You just know that you want to do something.
Kraft is from Waterloo.
I'm mixed, so African American. My dad's African American and my mom's Caucasian.
In the future, he's thinking about staying in the area.
Did a John Deere interview for the early talent program. So if I get into that, I'll actually be interning at John Deere.
Kraft's not alone. Tiara Epps.
I go to East High. I'm from Waterloo.
Wants to be an occupational therapist.
I've learned a lot of things in the Career Center.
Anybody need some help?
The center focuses on giving all students a chance to explore different career opportunities.
Whether you're rich or poor, whether you are black or white, whether you are whatever, you get a competitive advantage because you get real life experience.
From digital media to marketing to nursing to construction.
There's a bunch of different opportunities here at the Career Center. So the fact that this article says that there isn't really bothers me because it is an example of this right here and right now.
In fact, there are 9 different jobs students can learn about at the center.
Figure out if it's truly a career field that they want to do.
About 44% of the students at the Career Center come from minority backgrounds. But what if we step out of the center into the community?
Like Cedar Falls is more like white people, and then like Waterloo is mainly black, and then they just think that Waterloo is like all like about shooting and all that stuff, violence.
So I asked Epps, what's the solution?
Just like coming together like the Career Center, like being with different backgrounds and like communicating with different backgrounds, and like there's Cedar Falls schools and East High schools, and we all just come together and we work together.
So it doesn't matter if you're from Waterloo, Hudson, interested in journalism or interested in engineering, all high schoolers in different backgrounds under one roof, hopefully building a new future.
Right now, there are 9 programs or career paths for students to explore. But the plan is to have 14 next year and then eventually almost 20. It just continues to grow. Back to you, Ron.
Amanda, thank you so much. You know, progressive education efforts like what's happening at the Waterloo Schools Career Center can certainly play a key role in closing the disparity gap. Right now, I want to go back to Waterloo Mayor Quentin Hart and comments he made to me reacting to the article.
You know, we're not going to be a one Waterloo if we don't start to take a look at ourselves, and if we don't realize that we have been blessed to have this opportunity in history to be able to change the course of our community forever, so that our children can be proud of, and our children's children can be proud of, and that people have the opportunity to be the best that they can be.
So many Iowa businesses say they are having a difficult time finding workers with just the right skill set. Workers with the skills necessary to be successful in today's ever-changing technological demands. Hawkeye Community College is working to close the disparity gap for all races. Hawkeye just opened its new Adult Learning Center in downtown Waterloo on Jefferson Street between West First and West Mullen. The center is helping students from a wide variety of cultures. In fact, students from 40 countries are already using Hawkeye's new Adult Learning Center. Some are getting their high school equivalency degree, many others are English language learners, and many are in advanced classes like this machining and blueprint class, classes for college credit. Hawkeye President Dr. Linda Allen sees this new building as transformational.
To me, what we can do in this center is the next step, the higher level of not just offering those classes, but also offering them to more people and to bring more people into that process, because what we want to do with all of the support services and opportunities for education at this facility is to truly transform lives. We will ultimately create a transformation process that is generational, and that impacts the community. And so what we want to be able to do is be a part of the community's transformation. We want to be kind of the impetus for some of the things that we know happen at this facility and have been happening for years with the opportunities we provide. We know that if we can reach more people and have greater impact, that will change the community.
A key element is that community colleges are affordable. Credits transfer for those who want to continue their education. And Hawkeye, for example, has an ongoing incredible relationship with the University of Northern Iowa. Education was critical for Sherman Wise, a UNI graduate who turned to Hawkeye Community College for his future. Sherman now co-owns his own local business, Premier Staffing, but he was once a high school dropout.
Why'd you decide to do that?
I just remember I was working a job and my daughter came in to work over lunch, and I was thinking I wanted her to go to college. And the first thing I thought is, how am I going to send her to college and I haven't been myself? So I decided to go back and get my GED. I went to Hawkeye's Metro campus, and it had to be the best decision I've ever made. If anybody is feeling inadequate, feel like they cannot progress in life, I would say, you know, believe in yourself, because one of the things that I had to do was overcome a fear to come to Hawkeye. And when I overcame that fear, I feel at this point I'm unstoppable. I feel like I can keep going and going, but I had to get over that first hurdle, and that first hurdle was to come back to school. And just coming back, it has opened so many doors for me.
On this day, Sherman is sharing stories with Pansy Lockett, who recently moved to Waterloo from North Carolina. At age 41, Pansy, a mom with a 3-year-old boy, is enrolled at Hawkeye to complete her high school education.
I have a 3-year-old, and I want to better my life. I want him to see that, you know, he can go to college, and, you know, it's breaking the generational curse of no college throughout the family. So.
And congratulations to Pansy for her decision to go back to school. We wish her the very best of luck. Right now, let's return to one of our panels and begin with this insight.
Our attitude reflects what's going on in our community. And if we set the standard at a higher bar, then the community reacts to that.
It's a very diverse community with very enriching cultures who are struggling just like everybody else here too. So I think it's good that we identify that we have become such a diverse community.
Public education is charged with the responsibility to educate all of its citizenry. And so we have to make sure that we are joining forces with those in power to continue to make the differences that we can make.
If you hear someone saying something that you know isn't appropriate, speak up, stop. And I don't just mean the white folks, I mean black, white, it doesn't matter. We have got to get to the point to where we're all working together to make our community better.
There's this perception, and so Waterloo has there's an image and a perception about Waterloo that needs to be addressed. And I think that addressing that would be a part of beginning to help with economic development.
We represent both economic and community development, and it's essentially one, but economic inclusion, or these issues that we've all talked about, are so necessary to grow the economy and grow the worth of the Cedar Valley.
There is no law that says John Deere cannot hire a person with a felony and have to do a background check. None, period. And so companies have a responsibility not to discriminate. That's their responsibility.
So I would just encourage a lot of the businesses, the HR directors, again, to put aside names that might not be familiar to you or other things that might seem uncomfortable, and look at the qualifications of a person and say, you know, they've got everything I need, let's give them a shot.
I have a good friend who always says that in a community like Waterloo, the white people are responsible for the black people, because the black people don't own any schools, they don't own any banks, they don't own any corporations in our area. So if there's a problem in the black community, it's most likely the responsibility of the white community to fix it, because they very likely caused it.
You're either an ally or you help perpetuate things that are happening, right or wrong. And not saying you have to choose a side, black or white, but you have to choose a side. I'm going to be a part of progress, meaning that everybody is important, or I'm going to be a part of the quote-unquote old guard that wants to maintain a lifestyle that was oppressive for most and beneficial for a few.
You know, our children are our future, and so if we don't get it together now, they're going to experience what we're experiencing right now 10 years from now. So we have to come together and address these issues, and not only address them, but take actions to improve our conditions.
I just think that education allows people to advance. It also helps your legacy. You know, now my kids, they know that they're going to college. They know whether it's going to get their own trade or whether they're going into a specific profession.
Did we get it all right yet? No. And the biggest room that we have is the room for improvement. But that is us taking a look at ourselves and seeing what we need to do better so that we can continue to move towards a one Waterloo. And we got work to do, but we're trying.
In tonight's program, we wanted you to be able to hear directly from many local voices. It is a Waterloo-Cedar Falls community-wide problem, and we know that tonight we barely scratched the surface. So much remains to be done. And if we are to change and make things right for all, make no mistake, the responsibility for making those changes and closing those gaps is ours, and ours alone. Tonight here at KWWL, we challenge you to join the efforts to be part of the solution. I'm Ron Steele. Thanks for watching.